We're going to begin in Ottawa, where government leaders are likely to be on a full-court press today selling their budget. We're tracking reaction as well today from opposition parties and from people right across the country. Here's a look at Parliament Hill on a very nice day in Ottawa. It's caucus day today. The Prime Minister set to address his Liberal caucus at 10 a.m. Eastern. And we'll be watching the halls as well for more comments from MPs as they begin to arrive for their respective meetings. We do also expect a response today to the budget from the Assembly of First Nations Chief Cindy Woodhouse. The federal government is billing this budget as much-needed support for younger Canadians, with the focus overwhelmingly on housing and affordability. And here is how some people see the new measures.
It is obviously appealing, but they have been saying that for the past couple of years, and it just seems like it's getting worse.
We need to afford tuition and rent and groceries and everything here, then it's kind of challenging.
Housing is difficult as well, but you know, people can share and stuff like that, but food, I mean, that's just, everybody deserves food.
The big numbers. The budget features nearly $53 billion in new spending over 5 years. And to help pay for the promises, the Liberals are raising taxes on the richest Canadians. That will bring in more than $19 billion in new revenue. The finance minister is still projecting to remain within her guardrail. She has a $40 billion deficit in this fiscal year as part of the budget. Now, Janice McGregor joins us now to look ahead to what we'll hear today. The Prime Minister speaking to caucus at 10 a.m. Eastern, as I mentioned. What will he be laying out there in terms of, again, reiterating the strategic choices the government made?
Heather, yesterday, obviously, it was the Finance Minister, Chrystia Freeland's job to give us all the numbers. Today, it's the Prime Minister's job to make sure we get the point of what this budget was intended to really be about. You see all the younger, diverse faces on the cover here, the talk of fairness for every generation. They need to make sure that gets traction now. This government is seen to be solving the problems most on people's minds. And this is a map for how the Liberals are hoping to use the last year or so, maybe, that remains in this Parliament before the next election. Really, this budget, their last chance to have enough sort of runway to implement things before they take it to the voters for their verdict. That's why I think, even though federal departments and agencies found over $15 billion that they could cut in recent months, and even though the size of the federal government is going to shrink by about 5,000 positions in the coming years, this deficit isn't really going anywhere, roughly projected in the short term to stick to about the same size as what we've been seeing this year. All those billions were instead redirected into things like that affordable housing strategy that the Liberals have been selling for the last couple of weeks. Also, financing to help some of those students in your pack there who are doubly pinched with high tuition and high rent in the cities where they're studying. Investments also to improve the quality of life for Indigenous peoples. That is what we are expecting the Assembly of First Nations National Chief to be talking about today, as well as the long-awaited disability benefit. Boy, we have talked about this for a long time. They are finally getting to doing it in this budget, but not to the extent of the financial help that advocates said were required for that group of vulnerable Canadians. The big move on the revenue side of this budget, the changes to how capital gains are going to be taxed when investment assets are sold, that arguably targets a very small slice of voters that can afford to pay. But it's also precisely those people that the economy needs to keep investing in Canada and help address Canada's business productivity issues. We'll see how this plays out, if there's as much of a push after the budget as there was before the budget to drive these messages home. But I noticed the official opposition didn't even engage with the pros or cons of any of these policies. Pierre Poilievre simply saying it's time for the Liberals to stop and we need an election.
Mr. Speaker, here we have today a ninth consecutive deficit, with the budget still not balancing itself. And everything on which the Prime Minister spends gets worse and more costly. He is spent, and Canadians are broke. The country is broken.
Pierre Poilievre calling for an election to fix the broken country as he sees it. And if the Liberals don't get NDP support, that could very well happen. What are we hearing from Jagmeet Singh today?
Yeah, I was curious yesterday, Heather. He didn't seem to want to confirm that this budget necessarily or automatically had his party's support. He criticized the Liberals for not doing more on specific things the New Democrats had called for, like targeting the windfall profits of grocery, telecom, oil companies the way they had demanded. Listen to sort of how he was explaining things in the foyer.
Want to hear what the plan is. Like, how is a prime minister going to guarantee that there's not massive cuts to services for Canadians with the cutting of 5,000 employees? How is he going to justify to people living with disabilities that $200 a month is enough to meet their needs? Like, I need to hear a plan on that before we make a decision.
Would we really see the government fall over those kind of concerns? Bloc Québécois leader Yves-François Blanchet was really calling this out as maybe a negotiating tactic that doesn't have teeth to back it up.
At the end of every episode of a series on Netflix, they say, in the next part of this show, this is what will happen. We already know what will happen. Mr. Singh will come here and find an explanation for his keeping supporting the Liberals.
Look, Heather, all the parties are seeing the same public opinion polls that we are. The Liberals want this budget to be the beginning of their comeback story. But if that's not where things are heading, New Democrats perhaps a little worried about going down with the government that they've been propping up.
Janice, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Again, reaction on caucus day from Ottawa, but let's bring you some reaction now from the provinces. From Ontario, the finance minister has blasted the budget as a missed opportunity to scrap the carbon tax. Similar themes from New Brunswick, and Premier Blaine Higgs saying it was another Liberal budget with massive deficits and reckless spending, driving up inflation and the cost of living. He also asked Ottawa to axe the carbon tax. And Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe said he was looking for new funding for municipal infrastructure and to provide Canadians with cost of living relief by scrapping the carbon tax. He says the budget went 0 for 2